Hey everybody, if you're following along in the book, we're on page 267. Otherwise, here we go. That throne room sounds like Hades, Grover said. That's the way it's usually described. I shook my head. Something's wrong. The throne room wasn't the main part of my dream, and that voice from the pit, I don't know, didn't feel like a god's voice. Annabeth's eyes widened. What? I asked. Oh, nothing. No, it has to be Hades. Maybe he sent his thief, this invisible person, to get the master bolt, and something went wrong. Like what? I don't know, she said, but if he stole Zeus' symbol of power from Olympus and the gods were hurting him, a lot of things could go wrong. So this thief had to hide the bolt, or so he lost it somehow. Anyway, he failed to bring it to Hades. That's what the voice said in your dream, right? The guy failed? That would explain what the Furies were searching for when they came after us on the bus. Maybe they thought we retrieved the bolt. I wasn't sure what was wrong with her. She looked pale. But if I'd already retrieved the bolt, I said, why would we be traveling to the underworld? To threaten Hades, Grover suggested. To bribe or blackmail him and get your mom back. I whistled. You have evil thoughts for a goat. Why, thank you. But the thing in the pit said it was waiting for 2 items, I said. If the master bolt's one, what's the other? Grover shook his head, clearly mystified. Annabeth was looking at me as if she knew my next question and was silently willing me not to ask it. You have an idea what might be in that pit, don't you? I asked her. If it isn't Hades? Percy, let's not talk about it because if it isn't Hades, no, it has to be Hades. Wasteland rolled by. We passed a sign that said California State Line 12 miles. I got the feeling I was missing one simple critical piece of information. It was like when I stared at a common word I should know. I couldn't make sense of it because only 1 or 2 letters were floating around. The more I thought about my quest, the more I was sure that confronting Hades wasn't the real answer. There was something else going on, something even more dangerous. The problem was we were hurtling towards the underworld at 95 miles an hour, betting that Hades had the master bolt. If we got there and found out we were wrong, we wouldn't have time to correct ourselves. The solstice deadline would pass and war would begin. The answer is in the underworld, Annabeth assured me. You saw spirits of the dead, Percy. There's only one place that could be. We're doing the right thing. She tried to boost our morale by suggesting clever strategies for getting into the land of the dead, but my heart wasn't in it. There were just too many unknown factors. It was like cramming for a test without knowing the subject, and believe me, I've done that plenty of times. The cab sped west. Every gust of wind through Death Valley sounded like a spirit of the dead. Every time the brakes hissed on the 18-wheeler, it reminded me of Echidna's reptilian voice. At sunset, the taxi dropped us at the beach in Santa Monica. It looked exactly the way LA beaches do in the movies, but only smelled worse. There were carnival rides lining the pier, palm trees lining the sidewalks, homeless guys sleeping in sand dunes, and surfer dudes waiting for a perfect wave. Grover, Annabeth, and I walked down the edge of the turf. So what now? Annabeth asked. The Pacific was turning gold in the setting sun. I thought about how long it had been since I've stood on the beach in Montauk, on the opposite side of the country, looking out at the different sea. How could there be a God who could control all that? What did my science teacher used to say? 2/3 of the Earth's surface was covered in water? How could I be the son of someone that powerful? I stepped into the surf. Percy, Annabeth said, what are you doing? I kept walking up to my waist and my chest. She called after me, you know how polluted that water is? There's all kinds of toxic... That's when my head went under. I held my breath at first. It's difficult to intentionally inhale water. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. I gasped. Sure enough, I could breathe normally. I walked down into the shoals. I shouldn't have been able to see through the murk, but somehow I could tell where everything was. I could sense the rolling texture of the bottom. I could make out sand dollar colonies doing the sandbars. I could even see the currents, warm and cold, streaming together. I felt something rub against my leg. I looked down and almost shot out of the water like a ballistic missile. Sliding alongside of me was a 5-foot-long mako shark. But the thing wasn't attacking. It was nuzzling me, heeling like a dog. Tentatively, I touched its dorsal fin. It bucked a little, as if inviting me to hold tighter. I grabbed the fin with both hands. It took off, pulling me along. The shark carried me down in the darkness. It deposited me on the edge of the ocean proper, where the sandbank dropped off into a huge chasm. It was like standing on the rim of the Grand Canyon at midnight, not being able to see much, but knowing the void was right there. The surface shimmered maybe 150 feet above. I knew I should have been crushed by the pressure. Then again, I shouldn't be able to breathe. I wondered if there was a limit to how deep I could go, if I could sink straight to the bottom of the Pacific. Then I saw something glimmering in the darkness below, growing bigger and brighter as it rose towards me. A woman's voice, like my mother, called, "Percy Jackson!" As she got closer, her shape became clearer. She had flowing black hair, a dress made of green silk. Light flickered around her, and her eyes were so distractingly beautiful I hardly noticed the stallion-sized seahorse she was riding on. She dismounted. The seahorse and the mako shark whisked off and started playing something that looked like tag. The underwater lady smiled at me. "You've come far, Percy Jackson. Well done." I wasn't quite sure what to do, so I bowed. "You're the woman who spoke to me at the Mississippi River?" "Yes, child. I am Nereid, a spirit of the sea. It's not easy to peer so far upriver, but the Neaids, my freshwater cousin, help sustain my life force. They honor Lord Poseidon, though they do not survive in his court." "Do you serve in Poseidon's court?" She nodded. "It's been many years since a child of the sea god had been born. We've watched you with great interest." Suddenly I remembered the waves of the Montauk Beach when I was a little boy, reflections of smiling women. Like so many weird things in my life, I'd never given to it much thought before. If my father's so interested in me, why isn't he here? Why doesn't he speak to me? A cold current rose out of the depths. "Do not judge the Lord of the Sea too harshly," the Nereid told me. "He stands at the brink of an unwanted war. He has much to occupy his time. Besides, he's too forbidden to help you directly. The gods may not show such favoritism." "Even to their own children?" "Especially to them. The gods can work by indirect influence only. That's why I give you a warning and a gift." She held out her hand. 3 white pearls flashed in her palm. "I know you journey to Hades' realm," she said. "Few mortals have ever done this and survived. Orpheus, who had great music skill, Hercules, who had great state, Houdini, who could escape even in the depths of Tartarus. Do you have these talents?" No, ma'am." "Ah, but you have something else, Percy. You have the gifts that you've only begun to know. The oracles have foretold a great and terrible future for you, should you survive to manhood. Poseidon will not have you die before your time. Therefore take these, and when you're in need, smash a pearl at your feet." "What will happen?" "That," she said, "depending on the need, but remember, what belongs to the sea will always return to the sea." "What about the warning?" Her eyes flickered with green light. "Go with what your heart tells you, or you will lose all. Hades feeds on doubt and hopelessness. He will trick you if he can, make you mistrust your own judgment. Once you're in his realm, he will never willingly let you leave. Keep the faith. Good luck, Percy Jackson." She summoned her seahorse and rode towards the void. "Wait!" I called. "At the river, you said not to trust the gifts. What are the gifts?" "Goodbye, young hero," she called back, her voice fading into the depths. "You must listen to your heart." She became a speck of glowing green, and then she was gone. I wanted to follow her down in the darkness. I wanted to see the court of Poseidon, but I looked up at the sunset darkening on the surface. My friends were waiting. We had such little time. I kicked up towards the shore. When I reached the beach, my clothes dried instantly. I told Grover and Annabeth what happened, and they showed them the pearls. Annabeth grimaced. "No gift comes without a price." "They were free." "No," she shook her head. "There's no such thing as a free lunch." That's an ancient Greek saying that translated pretty well into American. There'll be a price, you wait. On a happy thought, we turned our backs on the sea. With some spare change from Aries' backpack, we took the bus into West Hollywood. I showed the driver the Underworld address slip I'd taken from 8M's Garden Gnome Emporium, but he never heard of the DOA recording studios. "You remind me of someone I saw on TV," he asked. "You a child actor or something?" I'm a stunt double, but for a lot of child actors. That explains it." We thanked him, and he got off quickly for the next stop. We wandered for miles on foot, looking for the DOA. Nobody seemed to know where it was. It didn't appear in the phone book. Twice we ducked into alleys to avoid cop cars. I froze in front of an appliance store window because the television was playing an interview with somebody that looked very familiar. My stepdad. Smelly Gabe? He was talking to Barbara Walters. I mean, as if he was some kind of huge celebrity. She was interviewing him in our apartment, in the middle of a poker game, and there was a young blonde lady sitting next to him patting his hand. A fake tear glistened on his cheek. He was saying, "Honest, Miss Waters, if it hadn't been for Sugar here, my grief counselor, I'd be a wreck. My stepson took everything I cared about. My wife, my Camaro. I'm sorry. I'm having trouble talking about it." There you have it, America. Barbara Walters turned to the camera. A man torn apart. An adolescent boy with serious issues. Let me show you again the last known photo of this troubled young fugitive, taken a week ago in Denver. The screen cut to a grainy shot of me, Annabeth, and Grover, standing outside the Colorado diner, talking to Aries. "Who are the other children in this photo?" Barbara Walters asked dramatically. "Who's the man with them? Is Percy Jackson a delinquent, a terrorist, or perhaps a brainwashed victim of a frightening new cult? When we come back, a chat with leading child psychiatrist. Stay tuned, America." "Come on," Grover told me. He held me away before I could punch a hole in the appliance store window. It got dark, and hungry-looking characters started coming out on the streets to play. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a New Yorker. I don't scare easy, but L.A. had a totally different feel from New York. Back home, everything seemed close. It didn't matter how big the city was. You can get anywhere without getting lost. The street pattern and the subways make sense. There was a system to how things worked. A kid could be safe as long as he wasn't stupid. L.A. wasn't like that. It was spread out, chaotic, hard to move around. It reminded me of Aries. It wasn't enough for L.A. to be big. It had to prove it was big beyond loud, strange, and difficult to navigate, too. I didn't know how we were ever going to find the entrance to the underworld by tomorrow, the summer solstice. We walked past gangbangers, bums, and street hawkers who looked like we were trying to figure out if we were worth the trouble of mugging. As we hurried past the entrance of an alley, a voice of darkness said, "Hey, you!" Like an idiot, I stopped. Before I knew it, we were surrounded. A gang of kids had circled us. 6 of them, and all white kids with expensive clothes and mean faces, like the kids at Yancey Academy. Rich brats playing at being bad boys. Instinctively, I uncapped Riptide. When the sword appeared out of nowhere, the kids backed off. But their leader was either really stupid or really brave, because he came at me with a switchblade. I made the mistake of swinging. The kid yelped, but he must have been 100% mortal because the blade passed harmlessly right through his chest. He looked down. "What the?" I figured I had about 3 seconds before his shock turned to anger. "Run!" I screamed to Annabeth and Grover. We pushed 2 kids out of the way and raced down the street, not knowing where we were going. We turned a sharp corner. "There!" Annabeth shouted. Only one store on the block looked open, its window glaring with neon. The sign above the door said something like "Crusty water place."